This is day 6 of the January 96 7-day retreat in Springwater. Our group meeting last night turned again on the topic of anger. And maybe one needn't wonder why. Seems to be our most natural response, or one of our most natural responses to each other, situations, and not just very common, very immediate, reactive, but also very, somebody called it destructive last night. Fraught with consequences for oneself and each other, at the same time affording the gratification of release when it happens, only to turn into feelings of guilt or remorse, or justification, defense, keeping this body-mind churning. So the way it started out last night was someone asking, when you gave this beautiful description of 4 or 5 crows flying across the blue sky and no one there, the question came up, what if someone is there? You go into a meeting and all kinds of things going on, including violent reactions, maybe a violent reaction against you or me. Will there be the same calmness as prevailed in crow observing? Is that possible? And the person proceeded to answer his own question, says, yes, it is possible. At times. To remain with the listening and looking. And not go up in flames. As we usually do, which is why I called it our natural response. We're like a tinderbox, full of reactivity. The tinderbox made up of what? That's what we're going to look at right now. Because someone else also brought up that I'm an angry person, had a lot of trouble with anger, and I bought a lot of books and took a lot of courses and whatever all I did to learn to deal with my anger. But it didn't quite work. What needs to happen is to find out why I'm getting angry as I'm getting angry. And I can already hear somebody asking, well, don't you usually say, don't worry so much about the causes, don't dig for the causes, just be with what is there. Be with what is here right now. Physical symptoms which we describe at length and look at and feel out. But more than the physical responses to an angry word or accusation or insult, reveal themselves in listening, looking, and stopping this moment to find out what is happening. More than the body contracting and reeling with, needing to release, with lots of chemicals aiding in that. Accumulation of anger energy and the release of it. There's more than that reveals itself in looking and wondering, either right now or ex post facto. One can also look back after an incident has happened. Why did I get so angry? Why do I get angry? And by that not meaning intellectually to search for reasons along lines that I have learned, to analyze or whatever. But to watch right now what is going on. And sometimes it is aided by asking oneself a question. There's one person who said, shifting from dealing with anger to looking what was happening, found that having expectations is one of the main causes of getting angry. Not just having the expectation, but the expectation not being fulfilled. Can we examine this for ourselves, how our angry moments usually are the result of having expected something, wanted something to happen that was imagined, anticipated, yearned for, and it isn't working out. It is being crossed by another person or by a situation. And that can light up or display itself right at the moment of the angry reaction, often accompanied by verbal statements about, why isn't she the way I expected or the way I want? Why does she do or does he do this to me? This is not what I wanted. What comes in here is a tremendous investment in my way of having things and my way of, well, it's complex. No, it isn't, is it? My way. I want it this way. I want a certain job to be done this way, the way I do it. And I'm not just talking personally, I'm talking for all of us. And somebody doesn't do it this way, does it? More sloppy, thoughtless. This is how it seems. Maybe upon closer inspection it isn't that thoughtless. One has to first find out what was the person intending or what was their angle on it. Well, to find out more. But the anger is elicited instantly. When things don't go my way, I'm partial to myself, invested in my idea of what is the right way, which is my habitual way of doing things. My plans, and invested with myself. Coming to a meeting, we talked about this, bringing an agenda, and is that agenda invested with self? The agenda that I'm presenting is me, and if you attack it or don't go along with it, reject it, you're rejecting me. Because by a strange process, both mental and physiological, psychological, I become this agenda and get hurt when it gets hurt. Can we watch that? Is that so? And the moment to look is when we do get angry. the prime time for watching and asking a question. Was I invested in this? I identified with this? In not going along with this, do I feel people don't go along with me? And what is me? Other than all my ideas about myself and my expectations of what will happen to my plans, how people will react to me. And is it at all humanly possible to discern this? And upon discerning, expectation and investment in the expectation, identification with it, to wonder why. Why all this upset? Which later on, or right away, we feel as some kind of destructive obstruction. It does not make for communication, let alone communion with each other. It separates, polarizes, my view versus your views, because you're just as attached to your views and identified with them as I am to mine. And this way we will never meet. So, is it possible to go into a meeting? I'm just using this right now. The situation can vary. Each one can evoke their own anger-provoking situations. To enter a meeting with a plan, with an idea, wanting to suggest something or see something accomplished, and yet not attached to it, not invested in it, not identified with it. It's a good idea, that's all, so it appears. I haven't even heard from anyone else yet. Maybe it isn't so good when I hear from others. There is a porousness, a permeability. The thing is not solid and full of attachment. It's not a setup for myself. And the amazing thing is when that happens, and this can be learned by finding out about how we do set ourselves up into anger-producing situations. One can find out that it is possible to propose something, to want something as a good suggestion, and not suffer when it is being rejected or discussed or criticized, sometimes maybe ridiculed, made fun of. Because it's sent out there loose from the moorings. Sometimes we talk about sending up a trial balloon, which is not attached to the earth, to a person. So maybe with a meeting it is relatively easy if there is some wisdom operating which has grown over time in watching anger and seeing expectation involved, identification, investment. Or if there wasn't this looseness and detachment, the moment anger rears up, it'll be brought into view. And there's wisdom in this view. realizing what is happening, and it is inevitable to get upset when there's investment, identification. This is me that you're discussing now. Let's work with it, try it out, because it is a wonderful thing. To get together without prior investment. And then really look at some issues that need to be looked at. Free from personalization, which does not mean free from passion. Passion does not only come because I get in the picture and feel accepted or rejected. The thing itself can evoke passion because one sees how good it would be, albeit open to people seeing it differently and having that freedom, energy to enter into other people's perspectives. So, is it possible to live without expectations? Because that would be the ideal from this kind of a discourse. Have no expectations, have no disappointments. That's true enough. But expectations are wired into us. Every moment is a moment of expecting something to happen, to be, for others to be in a certain way. Because we have these images we've been talking about for 6 days or 60 years. And the brain, thought, memory, thinking deals in images. That is its base. So, not to expect to be free of expectation, but to be wise about it, to learn about it as we go, because memory need not be a hindrance. It can be a hindrance if it runs unconsciously, inattentively, compulsively, but it's a great aid when it is sort of serving as a resource for what happened at other times when there was expectation and anger. Does it, as it comes up, as a fresh memory, help to look at things differently? By differently, I mean not just to insist on what one expects, but to take it easy, to remain with what is, and to be in the full presence of it. It's different than the disappointed expectation. Through expectation, we cannot be directly in touch with that which proves so disappointing when there is just expectation. Without that, or by questioning it, what is here right now is not impossible to live with. Is that true? One has to find out. Keep examining it in a detached way. I found when I get irritated over something that does not meet my ingrained expectations, in looking at it, illuminating it, which means at the same time being here. Before it was just being in expectational mode of thought and imagination. But that mode changes at the moment that irritation acts as a waker-upper to say, what's going on? And with that, a change from expecting and thinking to listening and looking. And nowness, here-ness, not as a concept, but as palpable presence with each other as we are. So difficult to change our habits. We know that ourselves, and yet we expect it of others to change, and we know how difficult, seemingly impossible it is to change oneself. And yes, yet our frustrations come from people not changing, still being like this or that. And in that mode of thinking / emoting, we can't be present with each other. In a vast and wide world of different beings, different and yet all bonded in one source, one common ground. And if that is touched at such a moment, that common ground, the anger has no more feeding. Has no more fuel. It sort of goes out. Does that make sense, not to expect each other to be other than what we are this moment, and instead of keeping on with imaginary wishes that people would be different, to try to find out what we really are this moment? And whether we really are that different? What comes to mind right now is a huge oak tree like the one down there. Of course, right now that tree is without leaves. But in the summertime and in the fall, it is full of leaves of different color. Thousands of leaves on that one tree. I'm sure there's not two leaves that are alike in shape or color, particularly not in the fall. Some of them have holes eaten into them, others don't. Some of them have little insect injections, little cysts, others don't. Some of them detach early, others stay on, sometimes into the winter. And yet it's all one tree. And yet each leaf, if it could think, would surely imagine that it is separate from all the others. Analogies are beautiful, and they may change our way of thinking about each other, but do we see our commonality, our common ground? Directly, and that common ground is beyond our personalities, which are different. Some personalities are to our liking. We say our chemistry matches. Other personalities are not to our liking. We say we have the wrong chemistry together. Wrong views, we rub each other wrong. But beyond this personality attraction or repulsion or indifference, are we something more than that? More than our evolved, conditioned personalities with their inherited capacities, abilities or disabilities? Or are we just that? Living on that basis, constantly trying to make each other over in images. And the futility of it and the anger it produces when it doesn't work again. These mechanisms of getting angry when things don't work our way are common. They're not personal only. I think all of us know it here. The friction and grind and heat that results from something not going the way I want it, the way I've expected it, the way I'm used to it. There's sort of a great pleasure and contentment in an attachment to things going orderly my way. I'm not saying it critical, it is so. One can look at it, find it for oneself. And when this orderly going is interrupted, obstructed, the mechanism goes into friction, produces heat, wants to restore itself in its own particular order. That's why sometimes we get angry. We're comfortable with someone. We've just settled down to a nice meal or a favorite TV movie, and somebody calls on the phone and wants something of us. This unsettling out of a comfortable routine is experienced as frustration or anger, irritation. I'm doing this and somebody asks me to do something else. How easy is it to just drop it and do the other thing? It's not easy at all. In a recent retreat in California, someone told me, who was a supervisor, asking somebody to do a certain thing which obviously needed to be done, and he was right there. And he wrote back, "This is not my job." Angry, an angry expression, she said. And she said with that, she was angry at him for this idea of this not being his job. The expectation being everybody bow and serve. It was this particular person's background. You ask something, you say, "Yes, I do it." And the expectation was not fulfilled. And the other person's expectation of being left alone with his job and not asked to do another job was also not fulfilled. And involved in it was personality investment, my position, my territory of work. As it turned out, it settled itself out, communicated a little bit more about it, and that's the beauty and wonder of a retreat. One can work things out in openness. If for a while we just disinvest a little bit and look and breathe a little freer. To see what is going on or what just went on, and maybe have a good laugh about it. So this being upset out of our routine, our territory of work, that's very common, isn't it? Nothing unusual, unnatural about it. We don't want to be disturbed. And when something does disturb, how is it met? When something disturbs our momentary contentment, how is it met? And I'm not saying how should it be met. Please, let's not misunderstand each other. We're not talking about ideal behavior, but we're exposing the way we are, open to validation, to examination as we go, and wondering whether this is the only way. And out of such wondering may come some disinvestment and the openness of looking as anger raises up over being imposed upon. Which I'm also not saying, please let anybody impose on you and say yes. I mean, that's not, I hope you don't understand it this way. It's all right to say, I don't have time right now, I can't do it right now. But it doesn't need to become an angry explosion or implosion, which it usually does, with lots of consequences in our relationship. Guilt and remembrance and adding to the image of each other. So what our question a little while ago was, do we have a common ground like the leaves on the tree? And is it possible to be in close touch with this common ground, which, like the trunk and the roots of the tree, supplies an inexhaustible energy, creative energy, to be not just in molten shaped ways, but in fresh ways, in new ways. So maybe at the moment of anger, not just how to deal with the anger, not just what is the cause of the anger, but that listening and looking and wondering deeply, which is spacious and silent, free from investment, even though what is shed light upon is investment crossed. We said earlier in the talk that this work here is a, if you will, a two-pronged affair. One prong, I don't know what kind of analogy that is, but that's the word that comes up. One prong reaching into what is our moment-to-moment conditioning. Can that be revealed? Can it show itself? Can there be wisdom growing about how we react alone and with each other? And the other prong, reaching into what? That analogy fails. It is not reaching into anything. being here freely as nothing. Nobody special. No need for investment. No need for expectation because everything is already here. Needn't be expected through imagination. With which still another thought pops up. Maybe it just occurred to somebody. It certainly occurred here. The idea that if I have no more expectations, wouldn't life be awfully drab? Colorless. All the inner excitement and enthusiasm gone out, drained out. Because as one notices in watching, an expectation of a nice event immediately furnishes this organism with pleasurable energies, good feelings. It's like little fixes as we go through the day about what we expect that's nice. And of course the negative fixes expecting fearful, sad, ominous things to happen. See, again, I'm not saying be without expectation. It's impossible. It's so wired to expect another beautiful day, a vacation, a date, a child. But fundamentally, in touching our most common ground, everything is already here. Spacious, silent, and full of energy. We will end here for today.